Good afternoon and welcome to a Darwin Innovation Hub webinar. A bit of a lunch and learn today if you're particularly in the Australian Central Standard Time Zone. If you're in the East Coast, then you get a little bit after lunch maybe. And in the West Coast, well, it's just after morning tea, so it's time for a break anyway. But looking at the importance of marketing for startups and new businesses, all of this is really about the ability for us to be able to deliver amazing results for a startup or a new business without having to sort of sink ourselves into the quagmire of endless spending. So let's get started. So really the whole way we do marketing has changed a lot, mainly because of the arrival of these solopreneur businesses and a lot of these businesses that are very small and very, very agile in the way that they work. And some of this is because, we don't want to spend ridiculous amounts of money on TV and radio. So the digital ad spend in 2026 this year is going to be at 16.88 billion. These are numbers which I don't expect any small business to be able to relate to easily at all. Australians online now is nearly totally 100%. It's 97.1%. So a few holdouts there, mainly in the older demographics, like the very much older demographics, or the people who are like deliberately off grid. On social media, that's about 77.7%. So around about 80% of people are active monthly users on some form of social media. But 6 out of 10 people are checking online first before they buy things. I know I do it myself. I'm looking for providers that are either local to me, or I'm looking for providers that are, somewhere where I can think, okay, this is something I could, deliver or something I could do. So how do we make this work? We're going to have to do it basically by making ourselves findable online. It doesn't matter what product or what service we're delivering, we need to be findable online. But there is a 62% problem, which is people that paused marketing over the summer of 2025-26, and they saw a 62% drop in what we call deal creation or lead generation over that period. It didn't have to be that much. The ones who kept going actually widened their lead for the rest of the year so far. And this is because there is kind of like a problem with, you could call it a problem with, you know, um, I guess momentum. You lose momentum the minute you stop doing that advertising. And when you stop doing that advertising, you're kind of stuck. You're stuck in this place where you can't get any momentum again. The momentum doesn't exist anymore. It's completely removed from you. You have to almost start again. And as anyone who knows, when they've stopped something and then they have to get started, say workout routines or fitness routines or weight loss or eating, it's a lot harder to start again than what it is to basically keep something moving. So marketing in 2026 for a smaller business or any sort of new startup is not really optional. It's something you have to do. What is optional is how you do it. There's two very different games at play, though. There's the traditional small business, and then there's the high growth startup. So here at the Darwin Innovation Hub, we tend to work mostly with high growth startups, people who have that ambition of the 10x growth, the 10x return on investment, looking for investments from outsiders. So there's pressure from those investors. They want to prove what they're doing very quickly, and they need to do it before the investment running runs out. Whereas traditional smaller businesses like you and I are probably running, such as a food truck or maybe a consulting firm, it's very linear, steady growth, but it's not that 10x massive leap of growth. The customers tend to be people we can reach, local customers. The margins, stable 20 to 40%, somewhere in that range, hopefully around about 30% if you've got a physical sales business or a bricks and mortar. Could be a lot more if you've got a consulting firm. And it's very much the whole thing's funded by revenue. You make the money, you spend the money. Whereas I guess in different places, that wouldn't be quite the same. You wouldn't be spending your revenue to grow, you're getting investment money in to grow. And that's why they look for that 10x return, because it's a bit of a risk to invest in something so early in the game. So what do we need to spend? Traditional small businesses tend to, on marketing, spend between 3 to 5% of revenue and up to 10% if that is something they're actively growing or if they're very new. But a high growth startup often will spend 20 to 25% of their funded pre-revenue. So in other words, they've got some kind of funding through investment or grants that they're using, and 20 to 25% of that is usually spent on the marketing of that business. But businesses under the $10 million mark, Their revenue average is around 15.6% of revenue on marketing. So that's from Gartner back in 2025, like sort of mid last year, based on the US spend rather than the Australian spend. But it's very, very similar in Australia. It's around about 25% for new and about 14% in Australia for those more businesses in year two and year three. But for high growth startups, they're going to spend a lot more because they have a lot more money to make in a lot bigger of a hurry. Whereas those traditional small businesses, consulting businesses, civil construction firms, coaches, trainers, all that sort of thing, it's more like 3 to 5% of the revenue. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that a high growth startup needs to look well beyond its local area to get its customers, where the traditional small business or the sole trader or solopreneur is largely going to be drawing from a local pool. They could be stretching beyond, but it's mostly that they're going to be drawing from a local pool of customers who are a lot easier to reach, particularly in regional Australia, where the populations are quite small, but the opportunities are still quite large. Now, the only maths that really matters in all this is cost of cost of acquisition per customer versus lifetime value. So the CAC, or cost of acquisition, that is how much it's going to cost you to acquire a customer. And then there's amount of money you make over the lifetime that pays back that acquisition cost and then delivers you value over the long term. What you want to see is that the lifetime value is 3 times bigger than the cost of acquisition. So the cost of acquisition, let's say, was $100. You'd want to make at least $300 back from them over the lifetime in order to have a healthy return. Now, in a small regional center like, let's say, Alice Springs, your cost of acquisition will be a lot less. You might say, if you're going to have a cost of acquisition of $20, you may make, $20,000 out of that customer. Then your actual lifetime value is massive compared to your initial investment of getting them. But let's just say you're in Perth or Brisbane, then your cost of acquisition gets higher because there's a lot more competition, a lot more advertising has to be doing. You may spend more time networking or connecting with other people, spending money on coffees and transport and hosting dinners and all that sort of thing in order to get your lifetime value. But what you do want to get is you want to get $3 back for every $1 you spend in order to get into that healthy zone. But if you've got 5 times return over your cost of acquisition, you're probably under investing. So while that sounds great, that 5 to 1 sounds great, $5 for every $1 you spend on customer acquisition, it actually shows you probably need to spend a bit more. You're actually onboarding people too slowly, and you're not going to build enough volume to grow that business. Say cafe has a $4 coffee and they've got regulars that last roughly about 18 months. Their lifetime value is, say, 144. So that cost of acquisition has to stay under $48 of that $144 in order to be in the healthy green zone. But if you got over 5 to 1, so 5 times your customer acquisition cost that you're making over a lifetime, you're possibly not investing enough in your marketing. And where you've got, say, a under 3, so for instance, you're making $2 back for every dollar in a small business, that is a broken area. That's where you need to really reassess what you're doing, because you're probably either spending too much on your marketing or you're not getting enough lifetime value out of those customers. They're coming in, they're using you once, and then they're going and never using you again. So that's the maths that really matters. The kind of tiers you usually find in spending is, for if you're a solopreneur or you're pre-revenue as a startup, you're not really looking to spend any money on marketing. So what you're doing is using things like mail lists, you're using Facebook groups, you're using posts on LinkedIn, you're going to networking events. You're not actively spending money directly on marketing in ads, for instance, or using digital marketing agencies. The traditional business, once it starts to get established after a year, maybe 2 or 3, between $500 and $2,000 a month. Now, that may sound a lot when you're a sole trader. Trust me, it's not. $500 goes really quick in the world of ads these days, particularly if you're in a bigger market. $2,000 a month is not completely unheard of. Now, I've got a very unique business. I'm marketed through my partners, so I don't really need to spend much on marketing at all. I might throw $50 here, $150 there, but nothing like this $500 to $2,000 a month. But I do spend it in other ways. While I don't spend it on promoting and paying for online ads, what I will do is spend it on networking events, travel, going to trade shows, going to meet partners, that kind of thing. If you're a small to medium enterprise that's growing quite rapidly, or you're a startup that's funding itself out of revenue, it's not unusual to see $3,000 to $10,000 a month of revenue. But remember that 3-to-1 ratio, if they're spending $10,000 a month, they need to be making $30,000 in revenue, right? So that then gives them 20%, which is going to be the rest of the stuff they have to cover plus paying themselves. So just when you look at those big numbers like $10,000 a month, remember that they want to be getting at least $30,000 a month back on that. And once you get up to those funded high growth startups, say for instance, you've got $1 million worth of investment from a venture capital firm, then $20,000 a month for your for your initial advertising costs, because you need to develop a big customer base very quickly, like within a few months, between 3 and 6 months, then $20,000 a month makes complete sense at those kind of economics. That's where we just go, holy crap, that's a lot of money, but they've also got a lot of money to spend. Some of the free tools that you're not probably using as well as you could are things like the Google Search Console, which tells you basically how your pages are performing. So if you don't have Search Console, plugs in through your Google Analytics to your website, and you can then start to see how those pages perform. The Google Business Profile is the most underutilized piece of real estate that's so important, particularly for local businesses. How you can reach people, if you know want to use like things like Meta Business Suite to be able to send out organic posts through your Facebook or Instagram, vital. If you're not using it, you should be using it, because it's so much easier than trying to use third-party tools or the mobile-based tools themselves. Your Google Analytics are going to tell you a lot about what people like and what they don't. Creating content, you can do all that on the free tiers of Canva. You can do that on ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. All the free tiers will deliver you quite generous amounts of coverage in there. It was been building up a sneeze for about a minute there. Those free tiers will give you pretty much everything you need to create your organic content. Now, of course, you need to know how to do that. You need to know what good content is. But then you've got the email stuff, which I really believe is probably the most effective method of online marketing, using things like Email Octopus or Beehive or Brevo or one of those platforms, even MailChimp, in the free tier while you're very small and you have under 2,000 or even under 500 contacts, is really good. Use the free stuff first before you start paying for the big things. You don't need a giant CRM like HubSpot or Go High Level or any of those while you're still trying to build the very basics of your business. And there's tons of free government support out there as well. So the ASBAS Digital Solutions program ended back in the end of March, but a new version of it's coming on July 1, and $7.37 million being allocated to the Northern Territory, Queensland, and WA. There's also programs in Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and then another program running in New South Wales and ACT. But for those of us in the non-daylight saving states and territories, that's a lot to cover us. So that's going to come up in the 1st of July. So please look out for that. And we'll certainly be talking about that when it comes closer to the time. There's export market development grants that reimburse up to 50% of the market of the money you're spending on export marketing. So if you're trying to get your products into China, into Singapore, into the US, into Europe, some of those costs you're going to be able to get some kind of reimbursement for, whether that's directly going to trade shows or spending it on some of those digital platforms. Here at the Hub, we have free mentoring programs and all these kind of things that we deliver online all the time. So we're looking forward to be able to see more of you with that as well. And then there's all the grants finders. There's grants available all over the joint, from the business growth program in the Northern Territory, Queensland's grants finder, the WA's SBDC, the Small Business Development Corporation, is excellent resource of getting education that you need and getting introduced to agencies that can help. And then Grants NT in grants. The business.gov.au has a grants finder in there where you can search every grant in every state and every territory and what you may be able to qualify for. Let's look at some really quick case studies. So Darwin Food Truck can essentially spend no more than $500 a year and get to the top of Google simply by not using paid ads, building up lots of Google reviews. So they might need to maybe spend a little bit of time having an easy way for people to do their Google reviews, and then doing weekly Instagram reels of their food prep, or even TikTok in that matter. That's really good for getting local customers on board. So the top ranked food truck in Darwin on Google Maps probably wouldn't need to spend any more than $500 per year on marketing, simply because their marketing is exactly all that viral stuff you can imagine. I was watching a guy who's got a new coffee shop here in Darwin in Woolner called Brew by Maya, and it's which means brewed by love in Nepalese. So brewed by Maya, only been open like a week or something, and he was already on top of all the Instagram stuff. I saw him like he was holding a freshly made chicken sandwich and doing all the Instagram stuff for the moving forward, focusing in, focusing back, talking. So he's already on top of that stuff. He will do well because he understands that kind of marketing. A Perth plumber could go from 300,000 to 1.5 million in just 2 years simply by being very specific about their local SEO, search engine optimization, or their artificial intelligence SEO as well, based on landing pages on their website that specifically talk to specific suburbs. And they could run some Google ads too if they really wanted to. They could, spend, a couple of $100 a month for very highly targeted searches of very highly targeted localities for very highly targeted things. Your organic traffic could go up by 300% just from doing that. And that's what I guess so many tradies and small businesses don't do. They just don't look at this and go, if I just get my SEO right for exactly the person I'm looking for, you can compete with the big guys who are spending thousands and tens of thousands a month on Google Ads. Or a Brisbane fashion brand. I know I've got a few friends that have got fashion. Know they're awesome as one of those. Started in Darwin, now is operating in Southeast Queensland. They could be making 10 grand a month by month two. And in fact, Awesome did by building a real cultural narrative around it. So they basically paired themselves with an Aboriginal print designer and were able to build that cultural narrative originally out of Central Australia and then out of local Aboriginal artists in Southeast Queensland as well. They did some heavily paid social in a sprint at the very beginning, which is all through Instagram. And then they pulled back just to organic posting, building around the community that wanted to follow them for the cultural narrative they were building. 4.3% conversion rate is excellent for that kind of campaign. $10,000 a month by month two is what they were making, which was a 220% growth in Instagram followers as well. And when they built that out, that was something that proved that fashion is certainly not dead. There are niches everywhere, but you have to tell a story, and you tell that story by becoming very visible first. That's why they spent the money on the paid stuff. But then they pulled back to their organic promotion because they'd already got the following they needed to get. But there are mistakes that we will make, spreading yourself too thin across too many channels. The trap is quite often when you go, oh, I'm going to be on Instagram, I'm going to be Facebook, I'm going to be TikTok, I'm going to be on Google, I'm going to be on LinkedIn. Pick one or two. Okay. If you're a business to business, pick LinkedIn and maybe a little bit of YouTube. YouTube and LinkedIn are your two biggest things for business to business. If you're a services provider, your Facebook and your LinkedIn are going to be great for you. But if you're selling products, then Facebook and Instagram and maybe a touch of TikTok too could be really good for you. You need to treat marketing as a cost, sorry, as an investment, not as a cost. I know all we can see is the $500 a month we need to spend. Oh my God, I need to make that back. It is an investment. This took me, gosh, like 4 or 5 years in business before I finally got through my thick skull that marketing is an investment you make in your business. It's not a cost of doing business. When I thought that, and I know it sounds like a simple thing, but until you get it through your head, it won't be obvious to you. Then there's also paying for ads before website converts. You need your website to actually be performing without ads first, rather than paying for ads just to get people to your website initially. The problem is that we end up paying for all these ads to get people to a website that actually hasn't been conversion optimized. We don't know whether it works. We haven't tested it. We haven't put it through any sort of questions to people who are in our target market to say, hey, does this website make sense to you? You don't ignore the free stuff. Use the free stuff. Exhaust the limits of the free stuff first. Don't be paying for Claude and ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini, all of that, when you can use the free ones and get pretty much everything you need very early in the game. And the biggest mistake is not tracking what works and what doesn't work. Because what happens when you do that is that you have no idea what you need to replicate and no idea what you need to cut. That's where your Google Analytics, your Facebook Insights, your LinkedIn Analytics, and your Instagram Insights become absolutely critical for you to take notice of, because they will tell you where to go and where not to go. So what you need to do in this next week is complete that Google Business profile. Please be complete with it. Make sure that the information on there is exactly the same as the information on your website and all of your social media channels. So that phone number, that email address, that physical address in the same format across all of them. That sends lots of signals through to Google that you are consistent and that you are trustworthy. Choose maybe one platform, two at most, and then do 3 posts a week over 90 days. That's a really achievable thing. 3 posts a week, 3 months, one platform, maybe two. Set up a free email tool. Please, for the love of all things good and holy, collect email addresses from customers and potential customers so you can actually chat to them outside those social media networks. Get Google Analytics into your website so you can see what's working and what's not. Where are people going? Where are people landing and why? And then check all those grants portals, to make sure that you're not missing out on some free money that could help you to do these things. Or if not free money, at least it could give you access to people at low cost or no cost who can help you along this journey. You can continue this learning on the free interactive guide I've got there. Just scan that QR code. This will be also recorded and put onto YouTube. I know it's already on LinkedIn and YouTube under my profile. So if you go to youtube.com/at Dante St James, you'll see it on there. And then on LinkedIn, just look for me and you'll be able to see it on there as well. And it'll be able for you to replay it anytime you like. Also have it on the Darwin Innovation Hub YouTube channel in the next 30 minutes too. Have a great day. Hope you've learned something. If not, please do message me on LinkedIn and ask questions. I love to welcome those questions. Just look for Dante St James. It's pretty easy to find me. The only one on the planet. And you'll find me straight away. Ask those questions and I'll answer as soon as I can. Have a great weekend.